a question in the chat. It says, what would you say about those who passed away from COVID and so weren't able to have the Tahara process due to health and safety? What does that mean for the neshama? Depends what community you're in, but according to the National Association of Hevra Kadisha, which puts out policies actually kind of worldwide, but every city has to do what they need to do, we are allowed to do taharas on someone who've had COVID, which is take necessary safety precautions. And so there are taharas going on even in this COVID pandemic. But if someone wasn't able to have the tahara because of this particular city that you're in, it's okay. The neshama, the person was buried. The person is going on to the next world, and it's okay. Don't worry about it. It's okay, really, for the neshama. It's okay. If you think about when a baby is born, the baby is washed and gently wrapped in a blanket and give it to its mother, and the baby, and that's very much similar to a tahara. But if there's a case where a baby can't be washed, it's okay for the baby. Eventually it's just fine. What about when people actually know that they will possibly pass away and get ready for it? I'm not really sure what this question means. If whoever asked that wanted to open up their mic and explain that question.
Hi, I have a friend who told me about her brother passing, and she said he actually, subconsciously knew he was going to pass away, and he got all his papers in order. He got everything in order, everything was like in order. And then he actually passed away from a car accident, and everything he did, actually showed the family that he actually knew he was going to pass away. And wow. I've heard this quite often,
Yeah, that's very, first of all, it's so sad for the family. But yes, there is this concept, people sometimes start to give away objects. They start to get their papers in order. I have definitely seen several families do that. Definitely seen that. There is a sense that the soul partially knows what's going to be, not completely, but depending on the stage of what's going on with whether it's sickness or not. But I had a personal situation actually where someone was passing, and they gave me certain objects before they passed, and it's almost like they knew,
Yeah.
Okay, next question here. Why do people light candles at the grave? Well, it's probably very similar to the Yahrzeit candle. The flame represents potentially like the neshama, and the flame on a candle goes up. I think this is a tradition. It's not necessarily halacha, like a law, but it's a tradition. It's a nice thing to do.
Some people have a custom to light a candle on Shabbos for every member of their family for a similar reason, because a person's neshama is a flame, is a candle, and it's represented by the candle. So it's there in a positive way as well.
Right. Very nice. There's a question here that says, why can't we see a medium to connect with our departed loved ones? So this is a very big question. We try not to do that in Judaism. We try to stay away from going into that because it's I don't want to say dangerous, but it's dangerous from a spiritual perspective, because there's just there's a whole other underworld and afterlife. You just don't want to go there. I don't know exactly the answer to that question, but it's not something that we're supposed to do.
Isn't it forbidden?
Yes.
Because in Shaul, we see that when Shaul just go to somebody and ask to see Moshe, and it's really forbidden to ask this for the souls from the other side.
That's right. There are cases where, you'll maybe potentially read stories of great tzaddikim who will that say that there's like a soul that's within a body that has to be extricated because it's causing all kinds of harm. That's a different situation. The tzaddik has it's very holy and they can do certain things to extricate that soul from causing problems, but that's different than going to see a medium and conjuring up, like sort of like what you see in the movies, that's not, it's forbidden. It's not something that we do. Could you say something about wandering souls? How can we help them, especially if they don't have descendants or someone to pray for them or say Mishnayos? Yeah, I mean, if someone doesn't have a direct descendant, I mean, there are people who you can pay someone to say Kaddish or Mishnayos if you don't know how to do it yourself. But anything that we do for a departed soul merits them. If we know their name, even if we don't know their name, we could say, Robin, Bat Sarah, whatever. That's not my name. But you can say someone's soul. Like if you have a friend who you believe that they don't have any descendants or someone to pray for them, you can do things for them, help them. Why do Jews not take flowers to a grave, and why do they leave a stone? This is a great question. In fact, I wanted to show you this. This is a little book. It's called I Lost Someone Special. And I edited the book called The Neshama Should Have an Aliyah, and it's for adults. And then I said, well, we have to teach this to kids. And everybody thought I was crazy out of my mind that you have to teach this to kids. And I said, yes, you can. Kids are open to this. So I wrote a little book called Let's Do a Mitzvah for Bubby and Zadie. And then we turned that book into this, I Lost Someone Special. And it goes through all the mitzvahs that we can do. And one of those things is placing a stone at the gravesite. And we have a picture in here. But the reason that we do that is because a stone lasts, flowers die. And you can go to a cemetery after many years and you can see all these stones that are still there. I'm trying to find a picture in the book. But it's really, that's the main point. That's the point that the stone is lasting and the flowers die. That's why we bring stones.
May I add an insight into the stones?
Yes.
My name's Debbie Atlas from London. I heard this beautiful idea from Robertson Knopfler. A stone in Hebrew, the word is even, Aleph, Bet, Nun. The word even is a synthesis of two words, of Av and Ben. And when we put a stone on a kever, we are saying that we aspire to continue whatever legacy our parents left us in this world. Because the word Ben is the same root as binyan, to build. Our job is to build upon that which our parents did in this world. That's how we say Ze Keli v'aroma menu. We will build on whatever we have been gifted by our parents and elevate what they've done by making our own unique contribution in the world. And that is really the beautiful idea of Evan.
That's really, really beautiful.
Really beautiful.
Gorgeous. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Thank you. There's a post in here that says, I have a story to tell. So if the person who put that in the chat wants to share their story.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Ruthie, hi. Good to see you. A Londoner, but living in Montreal at the moment. Hello,
Looking forward
everyone.
to seeing you in Shul one day.
One day. I was just back in the UK, actually. So I don't know if you know, I do actually do past life regressions with people. So I hear many, many, many stories. But I just wanted to share a little story that's personal. I was back in the UK about 5 years ago, because I've been going backwards and forwards. And I had something wrong with my computer. I'm a London girl. I was living in Elstree. And it just so happened that the guy who was fixing my computer was out in Watford. So I borrowed a car, went out to Watford to get the computer done. But on the way back, I had to take the route on the A41, which goes past Bushy. And as I was going past Bushy, I heard this voice in my head, go and see Dad now.
People should know Bushy is where one of the main cemeteries are. So when people say Bushy, it's a place where people live, but it's also one of the big cemeteries.
So my Abba's there, my grandparents are there. But just out of the blue, as I was passing, it said, go to the cemetery now. thought, okay, I'm not in a hurry, but it was Friday morning. So I thought, okay, I'll go and see Dad. So I went to my father's grave, and I found the weirdest thing on the corner of the grave, on the stone. Among the stones, there were 2 letters, and they were like little metal letters. I actually got them here to show you. Here's one of them. This is an A. I've wrapped it up because it's slightly broken, and there was an N. And these 2 were sitting on the corner of the gravestone, and A and N are my initials, Anya Newstead. And I have no idea how they got there. I was absolutely stunned, but I know deep in my heart that it was my dad calling me. Sorry, I'm getting a bit emotional, but in a good way. He was calling me to go to him. And to this day, I have no idea how those letters got there. I mean, they couldn't have just been blown off a gravestone. And let's say they had been. Why my initials? Why were they sitting there? I did actually leave them there for a week. And I went back again, and they were still there, just to convince myself that I wasn't going nuts. And they were still there. So I think if we can be open to messages, it's the most wonderful thing, because they are talking to you. And I just thought that was such a deep message, and in a physical way demonstrated to me that my dad was saying, look, it's you that I'm connected to. Look, here are your initials. They could have been, RF, Ruthie Simon, but they weren't. They were Anya, and they were Newstead. And I'll never forget that experience, and that's why I wanted to share it with you.
Wow, that's really, really powerful and very beautiful. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you for your story.
There's another thing in here. It says here, 48 years ago, I was giving birth to my first baby. I saw my grandma, who died when I was 11, standing at the foot of the bed and telling me not to push. The midwives were cross with me, but eventually called a doctor in, and the baby had the cord around her neck and would have been strangled if I had pushed her out. Wow, that's incredible. Wow, thank you for sharing that. Let's see. Another post, I once observed a Tahara. When we were done and leaving, I felt a presence and felt like the soul saying thank you, a definite feeling of a presence saying thank you. Wow, that's true. I actually had that experience too, of a neshama saying thank you to me as well. It was very strange. A question here. What happens to a soul that was cremated? I tried to help someone I did not know, and she died. Okay, so this is a complicated. Oh, here, she died in hospital, and her family would not bury her. They cremated her despite me organizing the funeral for her. Okay, so this is very it's complicated. It's hard to, in today's world, there's a lot of misinformation. The cremation industry is very strong, and they put out all kinds of, brochures and marketing messages saying it's better for the environment, or it's, poetic or as such. But actually, recently in Los Angeles right now, because of COVID, the cremation has been put on hold by the government in Los Angeles because there's too much pollution being put into the air from crematoriums. So it's on hold. So it's a lie that the cremation is better for the environment. So this is a hard question, because let's say we go to a mortuary and they say, oh, just choose this versus that. But we on our heritage, we know in our Judaism that monotheism believe in burial, because it's natural, it's organic, it's the natural way of all things. God himself buried Moshe, and we want to emulate God, and we want to bury our loved ones. But let's say that you didn't know, the family just didn't know, they had no information, they didn't have the education, they had no idea. So it's not their fault, they didn't know, they didn't have this information. So we can say that in that case, that the soul is sort of not at fault. Like, for example, in the Holocaust, all the souls, all the people that died, they were all cremated. If they had been given a choice, they would have been buried. They would have chosen burial. So we can't fault someone who doesn't know any better, and we can't fault, obviously, all the souls in the Holocaust. That was not their choice. So they all died Kiddush Hashem, sanctifying God's name. So you can still do good deeds in their merit for someone who's passed and has been buried, been cremated. But it is, the soul does suffer. The soul does need to be the body needs to be buried for the soul to have a complete tikkun.
Someone sent in a question to my phone. I just want to read it. It says, random question. It's not so random, actually. Do you know at what stage does a baby get their soul? So maybe, Robin, you have something to say, but I strictly speaking, the definite soul comes when the baby comes into this world, but al pi Kabbalah, maybe as early as 40 days. But maybe you have.
I heard this question actually recently, and I can actually apply it to myself. So there's different levels of the soul. So you get the soul, part of the soul you get at that 40 days, part of the soul that you get when you're actually born into this world and God breathes the neshama into you. You also get a different level of your soul when you get your name. And then such. So, for example, I was given the Hebrew name Davina, but it's actually a Scottish name. I don't know if there's anybody on the call from Scotland, but it's not a Hebrew name. And I wanted to get a Hebrew name. So I added the name Sarah, and I added that name, a few years ago. And I kid you not, I feel a settling in my soul. And I didn't understand that until I asked one of the rabbis locally. I asked him, why do I feel so settled now that I have this name? It's like weird. I feel settled. And he explained to me that you get part of your soul when you're 40 days old, part when you're born, and part when you get your name.
40 days from conception. 40
yes.
days from conception. Right.
Yes, from conception. Right.
So I have a question. We say that the baby learns all of the Torah when they're in the womb. So you're saying just the first level of soul learns the Torah?
I don't know the answer to that question. I don't know. I could look it up maybe and get back to, or maybe Rebbetzin Simon, you can look into it. I don't know the answer to that. If it's just the first level in the womb or the whole thing. It's a very interesting question. But it is.
I agree with you that there is a very settling feeling when you get your Hebrew name. So and it's different levels of soul. That I certainly do agree with you. But it was interesting that we're talking about these different souls, and I was just wondering. So is it the first sort of level of soul that learns Torah?
Yeah, I don't know that.
I think that we're absorbing a lot when we're in utero.
That's why when we learn it in this world, it's like it has a familiarity to it. The Torah is familiar to us because we've already learned it one time when we were in the womb. Okay, here's a question. Isn't it usually better to not have contact with the departed? I've heard before that it could be a bad sign. Yeah, we don't want to try to conjure up any kind of relationship like that. No, but if they come to us in a dream, that's because we merited that, and that encounter could be fine. That soul is trying to communicate something, and it could be something important, something of danger. There's usually a reason, and it's okay if that happens. Let's see. What is the Jewish concept of past life regression? I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. There might be a psychological reason to doing it, to helping people maybe figure out, some, personal issues that they might have, but I don't know. Oh, there's someone who would like to share a little anecdote. Whoever that was.
Yes, sorry, it was me. It was just a little story, like he was saying that. Sorry, I just got to.
You want to put your camera on or not? I think it's Ariella, right?
I'm fine. It is Ariella. I'm fine.
Good to see you. Good not to see you, Ariella. Good to see
you. But you were saying at the beginning that the soul is in every country at the Shiva or Levaya, even if you are not in the same place where they left. And unfortunately, my father, Zichrono Livracha, left us quite recently. During COVID, he passed away from COVID. And I was extremely upset because I couldn't fly to be there for the Levaya and the Shiva. And it was very strange because I had the candle in the living room, and just after the Levaya, and I wanted to be able to see it at least in Zoom, and it just didn't work. It was cut off in the middle, and I was really upset. And then suddenly it was very strange. The candle made very funny noises, and he was saying the candle is like the neshama from the person who left, and he was as if, you know, he was talking to me, saying, you know, don't worry, I'm here too, and even if you couldn't travel, you know, I'm still here also. And after I think I told my kids, oh, that's strange, you know, we were all noticing that he was talking, like the candles was making these funny noises, and when I said that, it kind of stopped. So it was just you know, like a sign or him speaking through the candle, which represents the neshama, saying, you know, I'm here too. So just wanted to share that.
Thank you for sharing. I'm sorry for your loss. You know, it is true that, and there are countless stories that I've been told of people who have just passed away somehow communicating either through telephone calls and there's nobody on the other line, lights flickering. So you had some sort of encounter. The next question here is, my grandfather reassured me that don't worry, he would dance at my wedding. I would be happy to share my story.
Hi, thank you very much for your talk. So they were going back over 30 years ago, and my grandfather, Alav Shalom, was very ill on the run up. Well, I would say the year before we were going to get married, and my parents didn't want us to get engaged because they said, wait, well, let's see if Saba will recover. My grandfather was horrified. No, let them get engaged, and don't worry, whatever happens, I'll be at the wedding. And he was just trying to console us and make us feel better. When it came to, my grandfather was nifta just after Tisha B'Av, which was August time, and we got married in April. And as we all had the video going on and everything else, and I was walking around my husband under the chuppah, well, my almost husband at that time, and I suddenly stop in my tracks, and I had my grandfather, my maternal grandfather was, Baruch Hashem, he was there, and then I had my father, and I had my future father-in-law, and then my husband, and in between the two, I stop and I smile because my Saba is standing there in between all the men. And as I carry on walking around, I'm saying to my husband, Saba's here, he's here, he's here. And you can see me on the video that I stop and I smile in between the gaps, in between the rest of the men in the household, that they're there. And you can see me on the video, I stop and I smile to my grandfather because he promised me that he would be at the wedding. So it was a very big comfort. So yes, the neshama does always know what's going on. And I know that we say always that the souls of the departed are always at a simcha, but he had a promise and he kept it. So I wanted to share that.
Wow. I have the chills. I just really have the chills. That's an amazing, amazing story. Okay, next here. I dreamt of my mother on Motzi Shabbos. She died almost 29 years ago. She told me that she has to give the bowl back. I asked her, what does that mean? And she said she meant that she had to give back her neshama. And I have not dreamt of my mother for probably over 20 years. Wow. So I don't know what that means, but sometime maybe you will find out what it means soon. In ancient times in Israel, they buried people in, these stone boxes. What do we mean by a Jewish burial in the past? People were not necessarily buried straight into the ground. Well, quite often what in the past, people would have caves. And so they would bury people in caves, it's actually considered in the ground. So yeah, and in these stone boxes, I'm not sure exactly what years those were, but there were, you know, times in our history where rituals were lost and the halachas were lost, but it's always best to be in the ground, not in these mausoleums. You know how I don't know if in your particular country they have these mausoleums, but we don't want to bury someone in a mausoleum, sort of like a cement apartment complex, because then you have to embalm the body, which means drawing out all the blood, which is where we believe the neshama is. So we don't want to place a body in a mausoleum. We want to place a person in the ground directly. And in Israel, they actually do that. There's not even a coffin. You can just directly go into the ground. But most other countries, you have to go in a box. Okay. What is 40 days from conception in the context of IVF and frozen embryos? I don't know. I'm not so aware of what with IVF. That's very interesting. I don't know. Maybe it means 40 days from when it's placed in the baby in the woman in the uterus, but I don't really know. But maybe that's a very interesting question for a rabbi. I would think, you know, whether it's in the petri dish or it's whether it's in the womb. I don't know. When a soul is reincarnated, does part of it still remain at the gravesite? Yeah, this is a question I get all the time, you know, like, how can it be that a soul is reincarnated, but also at the gravesite and also with God? It's like in all these multiple places. It's in the Shiva house. We don't understand fully what's going on. But there is this concept that part of the soul remains at the gravesite, and part of the soul goes up to God, and part of it is reincarnated. So it's just something that I can't explain. Maybe there's a big Kabbalist who could, but I don't know how to explain it. But all the Gemaras that talk about, they explain that this is what happens. You're on mute.
There are a finite number of souls, so a person may not have. They may have part of a soul, whatever that means when it comes back.
Yeah.
So.
Right. So many good questions. Do we know if a soul can come close to us through an animal, i.e. a bird or a butterfly? Yeah, there are people who say that they have this sense of this feeling. And there are actually stories in the Gemara of, there's one story that I recall, like a dog comes into a synagogue. I can't remember all the details, but the rabbis swear that it's this particular person who was reincarnated as a dog and came into the synagogue, and they could identify him. I don't know the details of it, but yes, there are stories in our Torah, or not our Torah, in our Gemaras that talk about this. Yes. And other religions also talk about that too. Okay. What happens to the soul if prayers are not held? It's okay. I mean, it's comforting to do the prayers, but the soul, it's not hurt by the lack of not doing prayers, but it's elevated with prayers being done. It doesn't, it's not like it hurts the soul to not have the prayers, but there are some stories about people getting, if Kaddish is not said for someone and someone promised to say it and they didn't, there are stories of dreams of people getting that encounter with the loved one saying, you're not saying Kaddish for me, go back and do it. There are stories of that. I think. Oh, can you talk about organ donation? Okay, this is a big question too. It's a big topic. So there's differences of opinion. It's always on a case-by-case basis that you would talk to a competent Orthodox rabbi about this subject. But generally, you can make a kidney donation, do something to save a life. Definitely, we believe in that. However, to donate your entire body to science after you die, Jewish people might think, well, that's such a good deed. It's the ultimate good deed for science and medical, health and research. But we don't believe in that, because we believe we need to bury the entire body, and in full body donations we don't believe in, because the body it's chopped up and studied and such. It's usually cremated. So partial body, kidneys, an eye or something, these things, as long as it doesn't, see, if the problem with organ donation is you don't know exactly when death happens, right? So like, let's say you want to donate whatever, let's say a liver or a heart. Well, how do you know exactly when death is? And you could be causing death by taking that organ. So that's why it's very, very tricky. And you have to have a competent rabbi, competent medical practitioner to help in that process, because it's not just a black and white. It's not black and white. There's always a case by case situation. Oh, wait, this is a heavy question. Okay. How can it be God's plan when so many people pass in a pandemic like this? Okay. I can answer that question. And there's different ways to answer it. So when the Jewish people are going through a tragedy, there's different ways to answer it, but okay. Ultimately, in Judaism, we believe that adversity and suffering, it helps us to reach our potential. Now, this is not an easy subject, and it could take hours to actually discuss. And I have lots of packets of material that discuss it. And I'm happy to, I think I shared the packet with Rebbetzin Simon. So I'm happy whoever asked that question, you could get the packet, because it explains it way more detail about why does adversity happen? Why is this tragedy happening to us? And it's not something to just answer in like 5 seconds and make you feel better. It's really something to really study and get a hold of. But ultimately, when things, let's say when a minor thing happens, okay? Let's say a minor thing happens and you grow from it, and you grow in, let's say, your patience, or you grow in your anger management. Okay, that's a minor situation, a minor incident where you're growing in your midos and your character traits. But in a global pandemic like this, it's natural and human for all of us to say, why, God? It's natural for us to say, I hate you, God. How can you be doing this? It's natural for us to have those feelings. It means we're human, and it means God is God. And he has the answer. But I would ask Rabbi Simon to share this packet with whoever asked this, put it in your chat, feel free. But ultimately, we have a limit on our human capability to understand, our human knowledge of the whole picture, okay? You might have heard this analogy of like a puzzle, right? Or a carpet, and you can't see what the full picture is, because we're on the back side of it and we don't see all the whole entire picture. And it could seem very difficult, but really the ultimate picture is beautiful. And it's hard for us to understand that, but we have to have this sense of emunah, the sense of trust that God knows what he's doing, and we just don't. Like, if you think about the Jews, we're studying in the Parsha right now about the plagues, about darkness, about, the death of the firstborn, about all these horrible things that were happening. Why did the Jews have to go through hundreds of years of slavery and backbreaking torture? Why were the babies killed in Mitzrayim? Why did Paro, bathe in the blood of the Jews? Why did those terrible things happen to those Jewish people? Well, eventually they left Egypt and they got the Torah and they became the Jewish nation. So we don't know. And it's horrible. It's the suffering that we're all experiencing it's tremendous. And the loss that we're having is tremendous. And I can't understand your pain. You can't understand my pain. And if anybody says they can, they're wrong. Okay. We're all suffering in different ways. So study this a little bit and know that ultimately everything that God does is for the best, but we just can't see it right now.
My husband just he just sent me a message regarding, I asked about the two of the questions. One is that the IVF, so at the time of implantation in the womb. So that's the answer to that. Thank you, Rabbi Simon. And as far as reincarnation of the soul, it can actually be subdivided. Okay, a soul comes in. Because we're not talking about something physical here.
Excellent.
Sometimes we'll even see an aspect of a child, and we see an aspect of a person.
Right. So this next question is, how could we connect with the neshama? By doing good deeds in their merit, that's how we connect spiritually with them. Why do yard-tight candles go out when they are only halfway done? I don't know, maybe a wind blew.
They wanted to buy a new one.
It happens, it's happened to me. When we say Tehillim and the loved one still passes away, how do we know that Tehillim is helping their neshama? It's supposed, spiritual deeds that we do help the neshama go higher and higher. It just does. So any kind of prayers, any kind of learning of Torah, that helps.
It probably connected to the whole question of how does prayer work? Because we have to remember, we're not giving prayer to Hashem. The root of the word prayer, it's lehit palel, and lehit palel is a reflexive verb, which we don't have in English, but we have in French. Quite a few French speakers on this group, or we have in Hebrew, like lehit rachetz means to wash, to get into the shower. The water comes on us. We're not giving the water out, unless we're a 2-year-old splashing the water out of the bathtub, right? The water comes onto us. So with prayer, palel, prayer comes onto us, but that root means to discern, to distinguish. So when we pray, it's actually helping us to discern and to distinguish things about ourselves. I think when we, as Robin says, when we're saying Tehillim, it is doing something. We don't always, it is doing something for that neshama. And many people have seen great, great miracles. Sometimes an extra day, an extra few hours. Sometimes the person is ready to move forward.
There was a case actually that I knew of where a woman was in hospice care, and the medical facility was, actually the story is on h.com. It's about this lady. Her mother was given medicines to basically speed up her death. And she recognized what was going on somehow, and the daughter recognized it and stopped it. And this woman went on to live another 15 more months. So the reason I'm mentioning that is because we don't know when the exact point is of death, when it's going to be, and we don't want to intervene, and we want to be very careful. And prayers are one of those things that we can do to intervene, and we don't know the effect of them, but there are studies that show that praying for people can help people heal also as well. So in this world. This next question is a very philosophical question. I'll just mention it, but it's very philosophical. It says, I think someone needs to address the fact that so many people have lost loved ones during COVID, and therefore the Jewish process is not fulfilled as it has been for hundreds of years, like the lack of tahara and attending shiva and funerals. What does that mean for the Jewish people? That's also another big philosophical question that, would take hours to explain. But I think ultimately all of us can just ask, what can I do in my life? What can I do in my life to make myself better? I can't make the entire world better. And God is obviously doing this for a particular reason. So what can I do? Can I be a kinder person? Can I learn more Torahs? Can I take on more mitzvos? Can I smile at someone I wouldn't ordinarily smile at? Can I make amends with someone? What can I do to make my life and therefore the world a better place because of what's going on in the world? Why do people have to be placed in a certain way after they die on their deathbed, and certain equipment taken off in a certain way? In a Tahara, we just have to be very careful not to make the body bleed, because we believe that the neshama is in the blood. And so we have to be very careful. Usually you don't want to disturb the body at all. Like you don't want to take anything off, but if there's like a catheter or something, if you can do it in a way that's not going to hurt and makes a nifter bleed, then you take certain things off, because you want the body to be as pure as possible during the tahara process and then placed in the aron. So that's why certain things are taken, certain equipment is
unblocked. Nothing should be in the way.
Blocked. Very good. Yeah, nothing should be blocked. Okay. Why do we have to use the Hebrew name when we say Tehillim? If someone doesn't know the Hebrew name, if they don't know if that person had a name, you can say I'm just saying, making it up, Robin bat Sarah or Joe ben Avraham. You can say Sarah and Avraham as the mother and father if you don't know the Hebrew name, but if you do know the Hebrew name, it's better because the Hebrew name is the essence, it's the soul, it's the essence of that person. And so it's the essence of who that person is, and it helps them in their transition. What if somebody wants to die early if they want to be taken off life support? Okay, this is such a painful topic, but we don't, in our Jewish belief, we don't believe in this. And it's very complicated because a lot of the countries in the world are making laws that say that you can end life. And there's many states in the United States that are now also in Canada, and I think in Netherlands and several places where there's a law that you can end your life. But like I mentioned in that story on H.com, that we don't know how long someone has to live. God is in charge, and people can go on to do many great things. There was a man who had, I don't know what the disease was, but he was basically paralyzed completely. And the doctor kept saying, you're only going to live 1 year. You're only going to live 2 years. You're only going to live 5 years. The guy lived like 30 years as this, I think it was like Lou Gehrig's disease. He lived 30 years that way. He outlived all his doctors. And he was able to write books and with his eyes, only with the movement of his eyes. And he said, which is, we can't even believe it, but he said that those were the greatest years of his life, that he accomplished more in his life in those 30 years being completely paralyzed except for the movement of his eyes. So this is why we don't want to take someone off life support. Is the burial the most important? Should I keep going? Is it okay if I keep going? I'm fine with it, but should I?
We're fine if you are fine. And if anyone wants to get off, they can get off. We are recording it.
Okay. Okay. I'm fine with keep going. Okay. Is the burial the most important of all the things that needs to be done? As long as that's done, the soul can elevate then? Yes. I mean, once the body is buried, that is when the tikkun process starts. And yes, it's very, very important. And that's done, then the soul can start to elevate. Yes. Are things that are added like transfusion blood or someone else's kidney or other surgeries change anything? No, you don't take any of that out. Do you think a deceased relative can petition to Hashem to help you with things you are davening for? Yes. You don't pray to the deceased relative, but you can ask them to help you out. And
We're also praying in the merit of the person.
Yes.
The merit of this person in my prayer. So that person, Hashem, please guide me. We're never praying to a person.
That's right. 100%. I think that's it. That's the last question. So we made it through. So thank you very much for all your beautiful questions and sharing all your beautiful stories. If anybody wants to, this is the book of miracle stories from this world to the next. And this is the children's book. I love someone special. And this is the curriculum for children or for teachers that it's in schools. If anybody's interested in that, you can go to nask.org. And it's a donation to help people get buried and have more education. So that's what all the resources are.
Do you mind, it's fabulous talk. Do you mind just telling us a little bit about that, the book for the children?
Oh, sure. So the curriculum or the book for the children?
The book, how appropriate it is and what age it's for, and is it, how much detail do you go into, etc.
Yeah, so it's called I Lost Someone Special, the mitzvahs we can do in memory of a loved one. So it has an endorsement by Rav Orlowek, who is a big Rav, and he read it. He was very involved with even the illustrations to make sure it was appropriate.
He's also a star educator who really cares about children's education.
What age is it aimed at?
Well, it's interesting because it's aimed for, 5 to about 11. However, people of all ages have bought this, and even adults have this book on their nightstand. So it's also got an endorsement from High Lifeline, which is they help people in crisis situations. So it's definitely something that that can be the pictures, as I can just show you like some of the pictures, so it's written in a sort of a poetic way. The words rhyme in the story. And you can see the children's age in the book itself. They look like they're about 5 and 6 or 8. And then this is a picture of the little children telling stories to their sort of stuffed animals, the way their grandfather used to tell stories to them. And so it really brings out the different things. And then at the back of the book, it's very sweet. It has, you could put your name and address there, and you can get a certificate sent to you for if you do something in the merit. And I actually had the most gorgeous thing. I had a boy who was like 12 years old. Yiddish was his first language. And he called me up and he said, Mrs. Meyerson, sweetest thing, I want to let you know I set up a gemach, like a lending library, a lending thing for pens and paper and pencils and erasers in my school in the merit of my grandfather. And it was like the sweetest thing, like that he would do. And then he would call me to tell me, it's just so sweet. So this book is written by Bracha Getz and illustrated by Hani Judowitz. It's based on the book I wrote, Let's Do a Mitzvah for Bubby and Zadie, but we had it properly produced.
Thank you. So it can be used as a bereavement aid for children as well as halachic information.
Yes, absolutely. That's what it is used for.
Thank you so much.
If there are any more questions, we can maybe take 1 or 2 more questions, but really, Robin, you were the star of the evening, and I really want to, we really, truly want to thank you for giving of your time and your knowledge and your sensitivity. You're so passionate about the subject, and I think we've all gained a tremendous amount about life. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. And if anybody has any personal questions or anything, feel free to reach out to me. I'll put my number in the chat.
Or I can give it as well.
You can give it to everybody. Yeah, fine. If you had any questions, my email.
I do have one of your books. If people, I have more than one copy of one of your books. If people we have at Kesher, your book for adults. So people can borrow it with pleasure.
Great. All right. Thank you so much for having me. Pleasure. And stay well, stay healthy, stay safe, and all the best.
Thank you very much. And allow this to be an aliyah for all the neshamas, in particular, Yitzchak ben Idol HaKohen, Mr. Ian Cohen, and thank you everyone for participating. And I hope everyone leaves uplifted as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much.